Well, hi everyone. Welcome to our Wednesday encouragement. It's great to have you with us. We're going to get to our devotional thought in just a moment. But before we do that, I want to remind you about a fun family event we have coming up next week. We're having a children's and family excursion to the Virginia Safari Park in Natural Bridge. That's going to be Friday, August 5th. We'll take the van from here and have a great day seeing so many of the amazing animals of God's creation. For more information about that or to sign up, email Christy Martin at the address below. Well, I had a funeral this week, and it's had me thinking about a guy who was a stalwart at Cherry Avenue for decades. His name was Mike Harris. Actually, his real name was Carroll, but someone nicknamed him Mike when he was a kid, and it just stuck. And that's fine until I went to try to visit him for the first time in the hospital, and I couldn't find a Michael Harris or anybody with the middle name Michael whose last name was Harris. Mike had the lower part of his arm blown off in France in the days following D-Day in World War II. One of our other World War II vets who's now gone to be with the Lord told me once that when Mike was wounded, a couple of his buddies picked him up and were trying to rush him to a medical unit to try to save his arm. But the only Jeep available was a general's Jeep. They told the NCO, who was the general's driver, that they needed the Jeep to try to get Mike medical help, but he refused. Then one of the soldiers pointed his rifle at the driver and let him know that they were going to take the Jeep, and he could either drive them and bring it back to the general, or he could be laying out, going there to get help himself. It didn't take the guy long to decide he'd better drive them. In the end, they couldn't save Mike's arm. Now, I can't imagine how I would react if I were to lose an arm. Well, okay, yeah, I could. I imagine I'd be angry, and then I'd get frustrated as I tried to learn to do some of the things the one-handed, and I'd complain about things I couldn't do, or at least couldn't do well anymore. I'm not proud of that, but if I'm being real, that's probably what would happen. The thing that always amazed me about Mike was that I never once heard him complain. Never heard him get frustrated about having only one hand. And at first I thought it was just because I met him when he was older and he had already gone through the complaining stage. But I talked to a lot of people who knew him both before, during, and after the time where he lost his arm, and they all said they never once heard him complain or get frustrated at his situation. He just adjusted and went on with his life. He worked as a painter for decades and did a great job. He oversaw the building and grounds here at Cherry Avenue for the longest time, and nothing slowed him down or limited him at all until he had to look after his wife when her health took a turn for the worse. And even then, he spent every day with her at the nursing home. In fact, he had a sense of humor about the situation. When people, especially kids, would ask him what happened to his arm, I don't think he ever told the same story twice. He loved to make out outlandish stories about how he had lost it fighting mountain lions or bears or in 100 other ways. For people of Mike's generation, people who grew up during the Depression, dealing with hardship became a normal part of life. And while I'm sure he had some internal struggles with it in the beginning, that suck it up and get on with life mindset kicked in. That, combined with his faith, allowed him to adjust pretty quickly. Those of us who were born a little later, we don't always adapt as naturally. And so it's even more important that we learn to lean on the promises of God. He promises us over and over in Scripture that He'll be with us and He'll walk with us through even the worst situations. Romans 8:28 is just one of many examples. In it, Paul reminds us, we know. Now look at how this starts. We know. We've seen it time and time again. It's not speculation, it's fact. And we know that in all things, not just the good things, but the disasters, the tragedies, not just the things God wanted to happen, but even in the situations God begged us not to get ourselves into. In all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. In all things, God works for the good of those who love Him. It doesn't mean He'll solve every one of our problems for us. Doesn't mean He'll heal every illness or injury. But in every situation, He's promised to work for the good of those who love Him, for those who have been called according to His purpose. When we're aligned with God's purpose in this world, He walks with us and He works in every single situation for our good. And that gives us an entirely new perspective when we face difficulties in life. Even the things that are tragic, we can face them knowing that God is going to work in it and walk with us through it. And He can take even the tragedies of life and bring incredible good out of them. I miss Mike, and I even miss the times he'd tap you on the head with that nub of his when he was messing with you. But most of all, I miss that attitude that trusts God, adapts, and overcomes, and moves on with life. And the next time something negative happens to us, my prayer is that we would all do a little better job of asking God how He can use us in those circumstances to point people to Him.